Hi there, it's me, Jordan Van Haslo. Welcome to Jordan Van Haslo and Friends live on Hot 702.5 FM Las Vegas. Let's get on with the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Showtime with Jordan Van Haslo and Friends right here on Hot 702.5 FM Las Vegas. I am so excited to chat with the gentleman who is joining us today. He is a brand new friend who I met through our friend, Nicole Barnes. You know, Nicole, she's been a guest on our show, and she's been my stylist, my hairstylist for at least a decade now. And I had an event to go to this week back home in New York. And I reached out to Nicole and I said, oh my goodness, I need my locks groomed so badly. And I have no time to come out in LA. Who do you know in New York who I can go to? And she immediately texted back and said, hold on, I'm getting the number. And she texted back this gentleman. He is a native New Yorker. He is the King of Locs, and he's also a member of the legendary House of Omni. And I had so much fun sitting in his studio for quite a few hours last week. And I was like, we need to get even further acquainted. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Thando Kafele. Hi, Thando. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And thank you for what you did to my mop. I don't know much about clothes, but my hair looks fierce.
Well, that's what I try to do. Besides being a loctician, I try to be a self-esteem specialist.
Perfect. I love it. Wait, so how did you were the King of Locs. You were known as the King of Locs. How did that come about? How long have you been doing hair?
I've been doing hair and minds for 30 years.
30 years. Okay. All right. So you started when you were 4?
3.
But so I had so much fun getting to know you last week. So I want to know your entire story. So let's go back to the beginning. You were born, and then what happened?
I was born and raised in Brooklyn. Mom, dad, biological sister, adopted brother. I am from Brooklyn, New York, but
Are you the middle child? Where do you fall into that? Mom, or sister, brother, where do you fall in? Are you the middle child? Are you the oldest? Are you the baby? Are you the oldest?
Yes.
What's that like? I'm an only child myself, so I have no clue what it's like to have to, any of those dynamics. Like, as the oldest, are you the one who has to kind of like look after the other two, but also get to boss them around?
I don't have a very close, immediate family bond.
Okay.
I'm a little closer to my extended family, and my roots are from South Carolina.
Okay. Awesome. Pretty cool. So what came first? Because like I said, I want to dig into just you as a stylist. I think you're an amazing stylist. I want to dig into your career doing that. But then I also really, really want to hear about Omni and all of that jazz. So what came first, ballroom or hair? Or was it kind of simultaneous?
Well, ballroom came first, but it was extremely short-lived.
Okay.
I was coming out,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess looking back at it now, I was looking for an acknowledgement.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I needed it, but I guess in that area of coming out, I was looking for an acknowledgement of my group, of my peers in that group. But the ballroom scene there was a lot of non-productive things, a lot of drugs, a lot of hanging out late, and I had a corporate America job. And um, there were things within ballroom that made me uncomfortable within that genre and within my sexuality.
Well, isn't that the kind of the case with a lot of just young scenes in general? Like I think of just my scene. Like when I came to New York, I was in my very, very early. Like I might have been 20 actually. And I think I told you when I met you, like the very first person I met when I moved to New York was Willie Ninja. I moved to New York to do a musical, and I had a place. I was staying in a place in Chelsea, and I was like so happy. Like I'm in New York. I'm gonna have a drink because I remember I had a rehearsal at like 7 p.m. and it was right at 4 o'clock. And I remember I lived a few blocks away from XL. Remember XL on 14th Street? It was one of John Blair's clubs. And I remember walking over, and it was like it just opened. It was like 4 p.m. and like they just opened the doors. And I sat down, and I think these are the Sex and the City days. So I think I ordered myself a Cosmopolitan, and I was like feeling so happy about myself. And then these two people came in, and it was Willie Ninja and a friend of his who I believe worked for like Black Hair Magazine. And we started talking, and he gave me his card. I think I think he hosted a party on like Sundays at the Stonewall, and he was like, "You should come around." But in my head, I was like, "I'm going to Broadway. I'm not going downtown." And that's like the one of the few things in my life that I regret not like doing, because I never went, and I never followed up with him. I never called him. I never went to his party. And I always in my mind think like, oh my God, especially now since like ballroom has become so mainstream and everyone's talking about ballroom, and and a lot of the folks from that world are really being talked about in a mainstream way. I always wonder like, oh, what would have happened if I had kind of just explored that world, and and just explored that community? How did you fall into how did you find ballroom?
Honestly, I don't remember.
How
It's
old were
been
you
so
about?
long ago, but um, I must have been around 18, 19.
Mhm.
But there was so much, there was also the balance of so much positivity. There was so much love. And those house members and those friends and those peers, those were the group that I came out with, you know?
Yeah.
And I want to give a special acknowledgement to Kevin Omni, who has been the mother and the father and the parent of our house and has always been attentive, has always been available. And thank you. You know, Kevin, I'm sure if I called Kevin right now, he would remember my birthday after not seeing him in about 10 years.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
true definition of a house parent. And yeah, that um, role model that we needed during that time because we didn't have a lot of direction. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't have it from a parental father figure. I didn't have any brothers. You know, I didn't have any older brothers. So, yeah, ballroom and the house scene was a safe space in my coming out.
Yeah.
And I'm just grateful that I can look back at 55 and say that I'm still here because I
Yeah.
lost so many friends to the epidemic of AIDS. Um, and none of us who are still here back then had counseling or therapy available.
Yeah. That's really that's really hard. I'm the board president of a nonprofit called the Entertainment and Arts Alliance, but it was actually founded before we expanded our mission. We were called the Entertainment AIDS Alliance, and it was founded in 1989 as the Video Industry AIDS Action Committee. And so it was founded from 2009 up until 2018 when we started expanding our mission. It was solely focused on raising money for folks who work in entertainment and media who were living with AIDS, and giving them emergency grant money, for medicine, housing, whatever they needed, and also donating money to other organizations across the country, grassroots organizations that were, uh, you know, uh, uh, benefiting at like an underserved area, right? Like those small, like the grassroots organization, in rural Mississippi and rural Iowa. And, I've had a lot of conversations with many of the founders, a lot of whom have been living with HIV and or AIDS since like the early 80s. And also I've had lots of conversations with people who have been beneficiaries of our organization. And just hearing you say about like not having counseling, not having like I think one of the things that people don't really talk about is the trauma of seeing so many people around you go. So
Yeah.
I can imagine that's really really difficult. Was it like, so during your time when you were really involved with the scene, was it kind of like always like a high and low, or was it kind of like everything was good and then things started kind of not being so good?
Again, my ballroom participation
Hmm.
was like a wink of an eye.
Really?
I was in and I was out. It really didn't serve me in that way. That wasn't the creative that I was meant to be.
Hmm.
And I'm still a part of the House of Omni. I'm not an active participant, but they're still my family and they're still my brothers.
Yeah. So what was the catalyst to make you say, I'm ready to move on?
That I didn't feel that I needed that kind of acknowledgement. I didn't need a bunch of people or a line of people to tell me that it was over for me. you know, I was just like, okay, I didn't want to be judged, or I didn't being judged in that way. It didn't work for me.
Yeah. When you say in that way, what do you mean?
I'm going to a ball to ask a bunch of strangers to acknowledge me.
Hmm.
And it was just a little inauthentic at the time.
Got it. So in other words, you weren't meant to be an actor. That's why you're not in front of the camera,
No,
right?
no.
So as you transitioned out, like, was it kind of like you just stopped talking to folks, or you just kind of started doing other things, and before you knew it, the way life goes, it was like, oh, we haven't spoken in a minute, or oh, I haven't gone to anything with this group of friends in a minute.
And as a same gender loving male who acknowledges masculinity, it was just a little too dramatic for me, and that wasn't a space that um, I wanted to be in,
Yeah, that makes
you know.
sense. I get that.
But the ballroom scene has elevated so immensely, and the creativity and the talent of the people who participate and the beauty of my brothers and sisters in ballroom. They're just some of the most creative, beautiful, talented human beings that you would ever see. So I would advise anybody who's never been to a ball to go witness and to see the array of talent that these people possess. Um, it's amazing.
I've never been to a ball.
No,
Never. Do you want to go to a ball? Let's
I
go to a
would
ball.
gladly, I would gladly go with you.
Oh my God.
It's been
Yeah.
about 15, 20 years since I've been to one, but I would gladly go with you.
I think that that would be wonderful. You just say where and when, and I will so be there. Like I said, I so am not a part of that scene, so I don't know anything about it. I don't know anyone in it, and I don't know where they happen. I don't know when they happen, but I think that that would be amazing.
Again, some of the most beautiful, talented people. Um, amazing,
Yeah.
amazing.
So
Like
you said it.
the category of voguing. It's like the art of it. It's like ballet and jazz and hip hop and the amount of physical ability that you have to participate and to be in shape and to do those movements. It's a true art form.
Can you still dead drop?
I never did that.
Never did that. So you said around this same time you had kind of like a corporate job. What were you doing?
Oh my goodness. I worked for the Board of Education. I worked at the World Trade Center. I worked in DC at a law firm, temp agencies. Um, but I used to get my hair twisted.
Uh-huh.
And I was fascinated with the way that this particular brother twisted my hair, and it was done with a comb. And I mimicked it. And people started to say I was good. I started twisting people's hair in the neighborhood, and I wasn't interested in becoming a hairstylist. I was trying to become a rap artist.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But I started mimicking, twisting people's hair in the neighborhood. I created a reputation and a conversation. And just one day I woke up and I said, I don't want to work for the establishment anymore. I want to do something that honors my culture and use a talent that God has given me. So, yeah, hair locking and becoming a loctician, it is an opportunity to coach my people to love, honor, and respect the hair that God gave them fearlessly.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So how did and don't think I didn't catch that. We're gonna go back and talk about your rap career. But how did how did so how did your career expand? So you were doing hair and I mean, because like you see you online, you've done hair for everybody in all kinds of places all over the planet. So how did your career start to expand between, oh, that guy who does really good, twists in the neighborhood to, oh, this is a profession and people are seeking you out.
When I decided I no longer wanted to do corporate America, I went to Locks and Chops, the institution or one of the premier institutions for natural hair training in Midtown Manhattan. And I took a formal education to become a loctician.
Okay.
Then I started to do magazine work. I had a publicist at the time, and they assisted me in getting my name out there.
But how did that happen? Like, was that like a conscious choice? You're like, okay, I've got my education, and so now I want to do big things. Let me hire a publicist. Like, how did that leap happen?
So, hair locking for me, or the art and the participation of being in natural hair, for me is like a pizza pie. There's slices. And so the first slice was the training. And then another slice was to become a loctician. And then you become a lock stylist. And then you become a magazine stylist. And
Mhm.
then maybe you want to be a
So
celebrity stylist.
I'm gonna just back up. So like when you say like for next step is loctician, the next step is lock stylist. What is the difference between the two?
A loctician is when you coach the client, the community, to love their real hair, to make them understand, or to give them an understanding that locks is the first hairstyle on the planet. And that if you truly are committed to having healthy hair, locks is the way to go. Locks gives you a grounding. And that's why so many people don't have locks, because it takes courage to wear your real hair. You know, that's why so many people are into the fake hair and the cosmetics of it, because black hair matters. Too black, too strong. And that's what locks are. Locks is a real opportunity to have a mirror conversation with your identity,
Hmm.
with your blackness, with your self esteem, with your Africanness. Locks gives you an opportunity to embrace all of that and have healthy hair.
Yeah. So at what point, because that's your philosophy like that, was that something you always felt, or was that something you kind of came into after kind of like thinking, you know what I mean? Like, when you were a teenager, were you all about locks, or were you like, what, like, because hair is an interesting thing, I think, because hair is so personal to everybody, right? Regardless of gender, regardless of ethnicity. People have a hair means so much, which is why when people start going bald, they might be in tears, which is what people like. Hair is something so personal to everybody. At what point did you really start developing your philosophy about what locks are and what locks mean, not just to the culture but to the individual? Like, how did you come to that realization or conclusion?
I came to that realization every single day. So I'm 55. My mom had locks when I was 7.
Okay.
So I was comfortable mostly seeing my mom wearing her real hair. Coming into Locks and Chops, I was under the tutelage of Adamola Mandela and Mr. Oren Saunders. So my training and my mentoring was very different from most, because I was
Mm-hmm.
mentored by two powerful, outspoken Black creatives, two men. You know, I am, I consider myself to be a son of both of them.
Uh-huh.
And then I came into natural hair. And yes, so I am called the King of Loc. But there's a lot of kings in this industry, and there's a lot of queens in this industry. And every single person whether it was a client, whether it was a stylist, almost a makeup artist, a photographer. Everybody has been a contribution to my mentoring and to my growth.
Yeah, that's lovely. So you get a publicist, your name's getting out there, you're featured in articles. Who was your first celebrity client? And was that kind of like a moment where you were like, oh my God, like I'm doing this? Or were you like, yeah, celebrities are people like us?
I don't remember who my first celebrity client was. Um, I've had some great highlights.
Yeah.
Mr. Todrick Hall. I've given consultation to Erica Badu. I've done CCH Pounder. Um, I've had some great opportunities. I've done radio, I've done television. Um, but what really got my name out, besides the publications and the publicists, was the competitions. And so
Okay.
there was a natural hair lock competition in Atlanta. And I won almost every competition that I participated in.
That's kind of
And,
really.
and at that
So
moment,
you found the ballroom that you wanted to excel in.
yes, that was my grand prize. That was my tens across the board. Yes. And so there was one competition after winning a series of competitions. Now I call them exercises in creativity.
Mhm.
There was a woman, Miss Marion Council George, who just stood up and said, "You're the King of Loc." And I was like, okay. I was cool with Kafele, but
But
that was
I'll take
something
it.
I'll take it. And so now um, I didn't really use it or make use of it until
Mhm.
recently because now I appreciate it more because of the experiences that I've had,
Yeah.
you know? So um, one thing about Kafele, I don't talk
Mhm.
about natural hair unless I talk about health
Okay.
and unless I talk about culture.
Got
And I
it.
think that is the distinction for me as a natural hair artist is that I am here to uplift and move forward the culture of Black hair.
Got it. Have you thought about writing a book?
I started the process. I've been in communication with a couple of ghostwriters, but I'm still waiting for that connection.
Got it. Like the connection in terms of like, oh, this is a writer who gets it, gets me, understands really what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to say.
And who I get to trust with my story.
That makes sense. So do you see it as you say your story? Do you see it as kind of like a memoir, or do you see it as like an instructional piece? Like how do you in a perfect world, what would that look like?
A memoir.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because um, natural hair has been a gift to me, but there's also been a lot of disappointments. And there are things in the natural hair industry that have been very unnatural.
Well, sort of like you were talking about in the ballroom scene, I think that that's the case with almost any community you're a part of, right? Like there's the good, there's the bad, and there's the ugly, and there's like
But
But
I
when you
didn't,
say that, like for example, give us an example of something that you've seen that has been unnatural in the natural hair industry.
that in my opinion, almost no one acknowledges culture. There, so let me just give an example. There is a conversation about should natural hair and natural hair stylists be licensed?
Oh, do you think it should be or no?
Absolutely not.
Well, I
We,
guess because even like like your typical hairstylist, you're licensed because you're dealing with chemicals, right? Isn't that kind of the whole purpose of like licensing hairstylists? Because like a traditional hairstylist is dealing with chemicals like lye and relaxer and all of that jazz. Like that's like my understanding was that was the whole point of licensing hairstylists. Am I wrong?
you're not wrong, but your use of the word traditional would be me.
Okay.
When it comes to Black people and our natural hair, we're the traditional stylists.
Touche. Good point. All right.
So when people make the request to be licensed by who? If you're not going to be licensed by Black people or the people who created the culture, why would you give that license to someone else to manage us?
Right. So you're saying that there's like a push, like there's a group of lacticians and lac stylists that like are pushing for licensing?
I think there's a generation of stylists who went to cosmetology school as their first option.
Mm-hmm.
And they look at natural hair as something that came after.
I see.
I'm the I'm the opposite. I never went to cosmetology school. I never understood why melanated people would go to a institution that didn't acknowledge, respect Black hair in its natural state. So I understand if you, and it's like, why would you spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to learn about hair that's not yours? Now I understand.
To make money doing it? Like-
And that's a lack of culture. It's not about the money. It's nice that money is made, but it's about taking care of people.
Mhm.
It's about taking care of people. It's like the natural hair care industry. And if you see conversations around that, the word care is removed. So now it's just the natural hair industry. So I understand if you want to go to cosmetology school and you want to learn the mastery of hair color, or you want to learn the mastery of hair cutting. Um, but when it comes to the health of our hair and the integrity, cosmetology falls short, you know, and it has never acknowledged natural hair. And now there's a push to include natural hair into the curriculum. But that push is not because they care about Black hair. They just want to make more money.
Mhm.
And so there's a legion. 99.999% of the industry has went to cosmetology school. And once you receive that cosmetology license, it's almost like a form of privilege. And so I only want natural hair included if it's taught by Black people. And I'm sorry, it's not enough to be taught by Black people. It has to be taught from a cultural perspective. It's not enough for natural hair just to be taught by Black people. it has to acknowledge our culture.
That makes sense. Is that like a curriculum that you've ever thought of putting together? Like in terms of like getting into that, like since that is the conversation and that's where a lot of the conversations are going, have you ever thought about throwing yourself into that conversation?
I had explored it, and I've explored it with a couple of people. Um, the challenge is that it's very hard to get people to work as a team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just feel like the culture, anything that pertains to culture, is being watered down.
Mm-hmm.
It's like wanting to include natural hair into a cosmetology curriculum is like the next level of gentrification. Natural hair is the one thing that makes us uniquely different. You know, I want us to be empowered to own our own schools, to teach our own classes. You know, I don't want to be, I don't want to have to ask permission to teach natural hair.
I understand what you're saying. So in other words, you're saying basically like in doing that, it's almost like giving it away. And then once it's given away, it it's gone.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. That makes the that makes 100% sense. Yowzer. Well, do you think that that's something that is ultimately going to happen, or no?
I don't know. All I know is that I have to be the one to hold the vision for my culture.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, completely, completely. So, talk to me about some of the ways that you've done that and kind of spread that philosophy. You talked about doing radio, doing TV. Talk to me about some of that.
ask me again, Jordan. Ask me the question again.
Well, you do your philosophy, and in terms of like, you can't talk about black hair and doing black hair and black hair care without the conversation including culture. And you feel very strongly about that. So, talk to me about some of the ways that you've spread that gospel or that you've evangelized that philosophy.
That I've been consistently true to natural hair.
Mm-hmm.
I never went to cosmetology school, and I don't fault anyone who does. That's just wasn't my path. Um, I never asked permission to do natural hair.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I teach natural hair from a natural perspective. I make an attempt to get stylists to use natural products, to get them out of the beauty supply store.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing natural in a beauty supply. If you want natural products, you go to a um, you go to a health food store. You make the products yourself. You don't go to a beauty supply. And yes, there are things that we get from a beauty supply that are not natural, that assist us in the styling of natural hair. But natural products has to be your first go-to.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be, it's like stylists on social media. I don't see anybody using natural products on natural hair. I don't get it. You're a natural hairstylist. You're servicing locks, which is the ultimate in natural hair. Wearing locks is you're wearing your hair in its most authentic state. The process should be natural. Water and oil. What else do you need? You know, and it's like this industry is like they're using so many products that are not natural. And you have to ask yourself, is the products that I'm using on the community and my clients, is it a disservice or is it a service to the health of the hair and the scalp? Mm-hmm. And I don't think that people give it the weight that it deserves because they didn't have that cultural mentoring.
Oh, that makes sense. And a lot of it is habit, right? You know, we use the things that we grew up with, or we use right? Just like in every aspect, it's like same with like food, right? There's so much horrible processed food and things that when you really like read the ingredients, it's like, why is there aluminum in my macaroni and cheese? You know?
But it's like when you step into the beauty supply, you're automatically not acknowledging and honoring natural.
Well, isn't that also kind of, you know, not so much an affront to the Black community, but just kind of the nature of the beauty industry in general, right? Because the beauty industry isn't about natural, right? The beauty industry is about covering yourself up with colors and shading to enhance or change your natural state, just as a whole, right? Not just talking about hair, but makeup as well. And you know, it's not the beauty industry itself, but like plastic surgery itself. I mean, isn't that kind of the nature of the industry as a whole?
I think color is very different. I think color is a conduit to self-esteem, to beauty. I don't think color changes you physically. I think it changes your energy. It changes your awareness. Um, yeah, it changes your personality.
Mm, that makes sense. So you gave me your hair oil.
Yeah.
What all is in that? I was like looking at this. What oils are in it?
So that's K oil,
Mm-hmm.
which represents the coil in your hair.
Okay.
And it's also Kafele's oil.
Right.
And K oil has been around for 25 plus years. And it is a combination of 8 oils that I put together that I thought and still think are a standard for the health of hair and scalp.
Yeah.
So some of the main ingredients are castor oil and avocado oil and apricot oil.
Can I cook with it?
Tangerine. No, you cannot. Because there's tangerine, essential oil, and lemongrass.
Ah.
That makes it not edible.
So do you sell K oil like outside of your clients? Like, is it available for purchase from the general
Uh,
public?
yeah, people can hit me via Instagram or a lot of times they see me at hair shows and I sell at vending spaces.
Yeah. Have you explored trying to take it to more of a mass market?
No,
How come?
I don't know. I don't know.
I love that. No one ever says that, right? Usually ask people questions, they don't know the answer. They'll like either like kind of BS their way through it or backtrack. I love you're like, I don't know. Like,
You're never going to get no BS from me.
I mean, that might be like an idea in terms of again, like, evangelizing, your philosophy on natural hair and all of that jazz. Just an idea.
I'm very scared of
Yeah.
losing the culture of natural hair.
Mm-hmm.
I get
Well,
very,
that
I get
no,
very
I
disappointed around it.
I get it, and but that isn't that. And again, I think it's not just that. I think it's with anything, right? Like, once something becomes too mainstream, it's lost, right? It's just I think musicians have that same thought, right? Like, oh my God, my music is so important. Like it's so much a part of me, and what I feel and what I think. But I want to grow my audience. But once you get to the point where you've grown your audience, it then does, like you said before, it goes away from you because it's now the audiences. And so it's much bigger than any one person. And it's then controlled by a big corporation. So where do you see that balance, right? Because at the same time, right, you have to have an audience and you have to, if like this is a philosophy that everyone, that more people should have or should be thoughtful or mindful about, right? You have to have a platform to do it. Where do you find that balance of, not being so afraid that it'll be taken away that no one's, experiencing it versus telling it the whole world and then, Estee Lauder trademarking it.
Well, I'm a keeper of the culture, and I think there is a couple of handfuls of us left. Um, Most of us who are keepers of the culture are usually not on social media
Mm-hmm.
because we're a little bit older, and I'm just no longer willing to debate.
Yeah.
no longer willing to fight. You know,
Mm-hmm.
people who are enrolled in my vision become my client.
Totally. So,
You
but
know,
okay, so taking that aside of like not willing to fight, but you just said like the keepers of the culture are older and they're not on, they don't live where younger people live. How do you transfer that to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation?
I'm
Like
about to
how do
do
you not
a
how do you keep it from dying is what I'm saying, because it's like if you say like, well, we don't live where these young people are. How do you move that tradition forward?
you become a bridge. And
Okay. And how do
so
you do that?
I'm going to do a podcast
Okay.
and I'm going to highlight and celebrate the pioneers of natural hair and the people in natural hair who I feel have the anointing.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are people in this natural hair industry who have an anointing to serve, to be of service, to honor culture. And those people intrigue me.
Yeah, I think that sounds really awesome. Have you ever thought, again, in terms of moving that tradition forward down the generational line, have you ever thought of somehow incorporating your connection with Omni with that and kind of using that as a vessel to kind of, reach younger people, a newer generation?
Now that you mention that, that was one of the main reasons why my participation in ballroom was so short lived.
Oh, yeah?
It didn't acknowledge Black culture.
That's interesting.
Everything was focused around European culture, and the standard of beauty was based around Europeans. The standard of fashion was based around Europeans. And I was like, hmm? So I remember going to a ball wearing Mashoud. Like, it's always been about Black culture for me. I could not see myself in Gucci or none of that. To this day, you would never see me in European clothing. 90% of the time, you're going to see me in Hadashiki or something cultural.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
So,
ballroom didn't acknowledge culture from a Black perspective. You know, I was getting ready to say Madonna. That whole conversation around Madonna and Vogue was just like, thank you, but no thanks.
was everyone excited about that when that happened?
That was a big moment
Yeah. Did
because
it move the needle at all for that
absolutely,
particular community?
it gave opportunity to some real special creatives who were deserving of that moment and that exposure, and it elevated the culture. Absolutely.
Do you feel it in some way robbed it? Like, again, going back to just what we were talking about not letting someone, like, what is your thought about just now that like ballroom is really mainstream after Pose, Ryan Murphy, after Legendary, after, do you feel that there's something that's been taken away now that it's in the hands of David Zasloff and every other media executive?
I don't know if it's been taken away. It's definitely the territory has been increased. Uh,
Like it's been
but
gentrified in a way, right? You mean you
I
go
just
on
want
TikTok, you see little white teenagers, yes,
I just want people
queen.
to know where they came from. I want people
Yeah,
to know their roots. You know, it's nice to see the leaves and the branches, but it's good to know your roots and to acknowledge the people who laid the foundation when there was none.
yeah, yeah.
And so it's like there's some phenomenal creative lock stylists, natural hairstylists, barbers, braiders. But there's a group of people who laid the foundation when there was no foundation, and when operating natural hair as a business was not even a conversation, you know? And so I love everybody in the game because I feel like I birthed most of them, or that I've inspired a certain generation. But it's like, I don't have a desire to have 50,000 followers because I'm
Right,
looking for leaders.
right,
You know, I just
right.
want people to give people their roses and to acknowledge that there's somebody who laid and made some sacrifices for you to be able to make a living and express your art with this kind of freedom.
That's lovely. And I think that that's a lovely place to stop. I could sit here and talk to you all afternoon, but unfortunately, we have advertisers, and I'm apparently not the only personality on this station. So before we go, you're not looking for thousands and thousands of followers, you're looking for leaders. Where can leaders find you online?
You can find me on Instagram, the King of Loc, LOC.
At the King of Loc. Awesome. Well, can I say thank you so much for joining us? And it's been such a pleasure getting to know you over this past week. And I look forward to getting to know you even further. And I want to go to a ball because I've never been. And I think it would be a very, very, very interesting and fun experience.
Thank you for this opportunity. You kept me smiling
Ah.
the whole interview.
Thank you. We'll talk very soon. And thank you all out there for listening. We'll catch you all next week for another episode of Showtime with Jordan Von Haslo and Friends right here on Hot 702.5 FM. See you then.